With modern applications, rendering, hiding, or animating elements on page is pretty common. But this also opens the door to a lot of glitches, sudden movements, and unexpected behavior. Usually, this happens way too quickly and can get annoying, especially when trying to catch an element that appears for a split second. Replay solves this by providing you the Elements panel that captures every moment that you have recorded. So even when an element disappears, you can rewind back and inspect its properties. Let's take a look. So I'm now in the viewer and I can right click on any element and then either add comment or jump to inspecting the element. When I choose that, I'm taken to the Elements panel, which is now focused on my Add to Cart button. Besides selecting elements in the viewer, I can use this inspect icon and select any element on page. This will focus on that element, just as you would expect. When an element is focused, I can take a look at its properties. In the Rules panel, I can take a look at what styles were added by various classes. In the Layout panel, I can examine the information about margins, paddings, border, and size of the inspected element. Computed Properties panel contains all of the CSS properties of a given element, and also a reference to a CSS file from which the styles were applied. Finally, the Event Listeners panel contains all of the event listeners and references to source files where those event listeners were defined. So for example, I can click on this colors, and this will take me to the colors TSX file, where the onChange event listener has been defined. Elements panel also provides us with a search capability. So for example, I can search for add to cart, and this will find my button element. During my recording, we have seen that this button element is going to change. It is either going to show add to cart, or it is going to show an error. We can examine this change by clicking through our timeline. If I go further, I'll see the error element being rendered out. The change that happens here is that this button will now have an additional class, add to cart error, that will give this button this red background. But also, as you can see, both of the add to cart and error texts are present as the child element of this button. The way they appear or disappear is handled by opacity. We can go to the Computed Properties panel and search for opacity. Here we can see opacity is set to 1 on the error span, and if we click on the Add to Cart, it is set to 0. If we rewind back on our timeline, where the viewer shows Add to Cart, we can now click on the span element that shows opacity 1 on the Add to Cart element and opacity 0 on the error element. As you can see, adding a time traveling capabilities to the Elements panel will give you the ability to stop your application at a perfect moment and deep dive into pretty much every property of an element that you're interested in.